When you think of war, what comes to mind? Probably soldiers, tanks, and explosions. But what if I told you the most consequential conflicts in history were fought silently, without a single shot fired? These are wars waged not on battlefields, but on stock exchanges and in central bank boardrooms. Wars fought with printing presses, interest rates, and algorithms. You will not find these stories in your standard history textbooks, but their outcomes have shaped the destinies of empires. These are currency wars, and once you learn to see them, you realize they are happening all around us, determining who prospers and who falters, who eats and who goes hungry. And the most unsettling part, every single dollar in your pocket is a soldier in this invisible conflict. The core idea behind a currency war is deceptively simple: weaponize your money. A nation might deliberately devalue its currency to make its exports tantalizingly cheap, drowning its rivals in a flood of affordable goods. Or it might jack up interest rates to attract foreign capital, destabilizing its neighbors. On the surface, it sounds like a brilliant strategic maneuver. In practice, it is the economic equivalent of a circular firing squad. Everyone aims at their neighbor, and everyone ends up getting hurt. One of the most infamous examples erupted during the Great Depression. As the global economy imploded after the 1929 stock market crash, nations grew desperate. In a frantic race to the bottom, countries engaged in competitive devaluation. Britain abandoned the gold standard in 1931, crashing the pound. The United States retaliated in 1933. Soon everyone was doing it. The result was not economic revival, but a toxic spiral of distrust that poisoned international relations and helped set the stage for a far more conventional and devastating global conflict. But do not be mistaken, this is not a modern invention. The Roman Empire was fighting its own version of a currency war 2 millennia ago. Rome's might was built on the silver denarius, a coin trusted across the known world. But as the empire's ambitions outgrew its treasury, successive emperors discovered a tempting shortcut. They began debasing the currency, mixing the precious silver with cheaper metals like copper. At first it was subtle, a little less silver here and there. But over the centuries, the silver content plummeted from nearly pure to less than 5%. It was the ancient world's version of hitting print on a money machine, and the consequences were entirely predictable: runaway inflation, a catastrophic loss of public trust, and ultimately, economic disintegration. The barbarians at the gates get all the credit, but Rome had already poisoned its own well from the inside. Let us fast forward to the 20th century, where the battlefield became infinitely more sophisticated. After the Second World War, the world's financial architects gathered at Bretton Woods to design a new system. The U.S. dollar was pegged to gold, and all other currencies were pegged to the dollar. This was supposed to be a permanent truce in the currency wars. Instead, it just created a new power dynamic. With the dollar at the center of the universe, the United States could project financial power globally without ever deploying troops. But this dominance had a fatal flaw. By the late 1960s, America was printing far more dollars than it had gold to back them up, paying for both the Vietnam War and vast social programs. Other countries, who were not born yesterday, started to notice. They began showing up and asking for their gold back. Facing a potential run on Fort Knox, President Nixon made a stunning move in 1971. He unilaterally severed the dollar's link to gold, effectively blowing up the entire system overnight. The era of floating exchange rates had begun, and with it, a new and chaotic age of currency warfare. One of the most surgical strikes in modern financial history occurred in the 1980s. Japan was an economic powerhouse, its high-quality exports dominating global markets and creating a massive trade surplus with the United States. Washington was, to put it mildly, not pleased. So in 1985, the major economic powers met and signed what is known as the Plaza Accord. The official story was that it was an agreement to stabilize exchange rates and promote balanced trade. The reality was a coordinated financial assault. The agreement was designed to massively increase the value of the Japanese yen. In just 2 years, the yen doubled against the dollar, crippling the price competitiveness of Japanese exports. This shock sent Japan's economy into a speculative asset bubble that burst in the early 1990s, leading to decades of economic stagnation known as the lost decades. The United States never fired a missile. It simply used the foreign exchange market as its long-range artillery. The thing about currency wars is that they rarely look like wars while they are happening. They look like policy debates, quarterly reports from the central bank, or pronouncements from international summits. But the casualties are very, very real. They are the closed factories, the surging unemployment lines, and the life savings that evaporate into thin air. During the 1997 Asian financial crisis, speculative attacks shattered the Thai baht's peg to the US dollar, triggering a collapse. The contagion spread like wildfire to Indonesia, South Korea, and Malaysia. Currencies plunged, economies contracted by double digits, and millions of people who had just entered the middle class were thrown back into poverty almost overnight. It was a brutal lesson in how, in our interconnected world, one nation's financial tremor can become another's devastating earthquake. If you think this is all just fascinating history, you might want to sit down for this next part. We are living through what many experts call currency war 4 right now. The weapons have evolved. Instead of just devaluing, central banks now deploy quantitative easing, flooding the globe with trillions in new liquidity. They use sanctions to freeze assets and weaponize access to the global payment system, effectively cutting entire nations off from the world economy. The United States and China are locked in a titanic, yet subtle struggle for financial supremacy. The dollar remains king for now, but China is aggressively promoting its yuan, building alternative financial networks and hoarding gold. For smaller countries, it is a perilous trap. If they keep interest rates low to spur growth, their currency could collapse. If they raise rates to defend the currency, they risk crushing their own economy. It is a game where the biggest players on the board get to make all the rules. The global events of 2020 threw gasoline on this slow-burning fire. In response to the economic shutdowns, governments and central banks unleashed a monetary tsunami, creating an unprecedented amount of new money to fund stimulus programs. In the United States alone, the money supply expanded by trillions of dollars in a breathtakingly short period. Initially, it seemed to work. Markets rallied, and a deep recession was averted. But the bill for that feast always comes due. By 2022, inflation was hitting 40-year highs, forcing the Federal Reserve to slam on the brakes by aggressively hiking interest rates. This sent shockwaves across the globe. The stronger dollar crushed weaker currencies, made it more expensive for other countries to buy essential goods like food and energy, and ignited debt crises from Sri Lanka to Argentina. It is the perfect illustration of a currency war's hidden cost. The policies designed to save one country can end up sinking dozens of others. History teaches us that these conflicts rarely end with a handshake and a polite agreement. They escalate until something fundamental breaks. Either a major currency collapses, a new monetary system is forged from the ashes of the old one, or political upheaval forces a reset. Think about the great shifts in power. The Dutch guilder ruled the 17th century, followed by the British pound sterling, and then the US dollar after World War II. Each of these transitions was turbulent, marked by conflict and economic chaos. Now, the whispers are growing louder about what comes next. Can the dollar maintain its dominance? Or are we heading toward a multipolar world with several competing currency blocks? Perhaps something entirely new, like decentralized digital currencies, will rise to challenge the old guard. These are not just academic questions. The answers will directly impact the value of your savings, the price of your groceries, and the stability of your entire future. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of currency wars is their invisibility to the average person. When a bomb drops, you see the crater. When an army marches, you see the soldiers. But when your currency loses 20% of its purchasing power over a few years, you just feel it as a vague sense of being squeezed. Groceries cost a little more each month. Gas prices seem to keep creeping up. By the time the news headlines declare a crisis, the real damage to your wealth has already been done. This is why understanding this battlefield is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a modern survival skill. When you grasp the patterns, how inflation is a hidden tax, how financial systems are tools of state power, you can start to make smarter decisions to protect yourself. You can diversify your assets, own things that hold value outside of any single government's control, and stop mistaking the numbers in your bank account for genuine security. Ultimately, currency wars serve as a powerful reminder that money is never a neutral, passive object. It is a technology of control, a tool of national strategy, and in the wrong hands, a weapon of mass economic disruption. The victors in these conflicts are not always the most innovative or productive nations. They are often simply the ones who control the printing press and write the rules of the game. And the losers are almost always the unsuspecting citizens who never even realized they were on the battlefield until their savings were gone and their futures were diminished. From the debasement of the Roman denarius to the quantitative easing of the modern era, the playbook remains remarkably consistent. The names change, the technologies evolve, but the fundamental strategy of manipulating money for power endures. So the next time you hear a politician or a central banker talk about a monetary policy adjustment or an exchange rate intervention, do not dismiss it as boring financial jargon. Recognize it for what it is, a strategic move in a global contest for power and wealth. And remember that in a currency war, you do not have to wear a uniform to be a casualty. Understanding this game is the first step toward navigating it successfully. The second is taking action to build real, resilient wealth before the next great monetary storm makes landfall. If this gave you a new lens through which to see the world, make sure you subscribe. History has all the answers if you know where to look, and we are just getting started.